good evening. Thank you for being here, even though it's an obscenely cold degree outside, so I really appreciate you being here tonight and braving the cold to be here with me. Tonight, I will be presenting a lecture recital on Valerie Coleman. So this is going to be Valerie Coleman and the power of musical storytelling. Valerie Coleman is an American composer, flutist, and educator whose work has reshaped contemporary classical music by blending programmatic elements, rhythm, and lyrical phrasing. She uses musical storytelling to guide listeners through vivid narratives, proving that instrumental music can speak as clearly as language. Recognized as one of the top 35 female composers in classical music by Washington Post, Valerie Coleman is an internationally known contemporary composer. Through her fusion of classical forms with African American musical traditions, Valerie Coleman demonstrates how musical storytelling can preserve cultural memory, amplify marginalized voices, and communicate powerful narratives without words. Coleman's works have been commissioned and performed by many renowned orchestras and chamber ensembles, such as the Philadelphia Symphony Orchestra, San Francisco Chamber Orchestra, Brooklyn Philharmonic, and Harlem Quintet, to name a few. Her compositions are often described as urban classical, blending modern Western orchestration and techniques with popular urban genres, including jazz, spirituals, and blues. I have chosen to focus this recital on Valerie Coleman and the power of her musical storytelling because of her influence as a composer and her dedication to writing flute music that has something to say and has a deep meaning. As a flutist, I've always been drawn to music that I felt was meaningful or had a reason or a story behind it. In this presentation, I outline Valerie Coleman's background and how it led her to form Anemones, then examine her work with the group, her dedication to cultural diversity, and her use of musical storytelling, transforming lived experiences and cultural narratives into sound, are just a few of the reasons she has been so successful as a composer. Coleman was born and raised in Louisville, Kentucky, where she began composing at an early age. As a child, Coleman would pick up tree limbs in her backyard and pretend she was playing flute. Her enthusiasm for composing began simultaneously when she started to play the flute in her 4th grade band program. Originally, she began her studies in flute at the University of Kentucky on a full scholarship. After her first semester, she realized she wanted to fulfill her passion for composition as well. Disappointed that the program did not offer a bachelor's in composition, she transferred to Boston University, where she could double major in flute performance and composition. After her time in Boston, Coleman moved to New York for her Master's of Music in Flute Performance. While still in school, she continued her composition studies with Randall Wolfe. It was while she was a student at Manis that Coleman conceived the idea to start a woodwind quintet. Coleman says that she has always struggled with her identity since she was both a flutist and a composer. She eventually concluded that she could not make that choice because both are so close to her heart. The idea to form a woodwind quintet actually grew from her desire to find a way to merge flute playing and composition. Though she did not play in a wind quintet in college, her experiences performing in wind quintets at summer festivals sparked a lasting love for the ensemble. Prior to Imani Winds, Coleman would have referred to her career goals as the soloist orchestral track. In an interview for NPR in 2006, Coleman states, "I can remember when I was a little kid. I used to be in the youth orchestra, and there were so many African Americans in the orchestra, but somewhere along the way, when I got to college, I was the only one in the orchestra. So I wondered, what in the world happened here? It came to mind that role models are needed. Using the name Imani, the Swahili word for faith, she formed a chamber ensemble with African American woodwind players who might approach music from a similar cultural background. They aim to champion non-European composers that are underrepresented in contemporary music. Characteristics of the group's repertoire include an emphasis on tonal music, full of all of the color and movement derived from jazz and world music sources, including Latin American, Asian, and African composers. One of the questions she posed to Imani Wins when getting them together was, who are your role models? And from that, did you have anyone who was an African American as your role model? The answer was overwhelmingly no. Although there was Wynton Marsalis, nobody could name any woodwind players. Coleman and Imani Wins set out to change that. Coleman believed that Imani Wins could use their heritage to interpret music differently, that they could show people that African American and Latino musicians are not aliens. She wanted the group to feature the work of minority musicians, both as performers and as composers. They aimed for music that struck a difficult balance, both innovative and attractive, challenging yet accessible. Coleman states, one of the reasons Imani came together was to show the African American communities that there is a place in classical music for them. Although they were inspired by other successful wind quintets, Imani set out to establish themselves as unique. They performed standard repertoire, but also advocated for more new and diverse works for chamber winds. Imani Wins members have earned a reputation for expanding the recorded wind quintet repertoire in a way that was culturally significant. The group was fortunate enough to have 2 composers in the ensemble. Thus, Coleman was able to compose works for the group for the first several years. This provided new works that explored the African Latin heritage of the ensemble. While Imani Wins themselves premiered many new works, they also established a collaborative commissioning project called the Legacy Commissioning Project. In addition to their work in commissioning, they created the Imani Chamber Music Festival in 2011, which was a mentorship program in New York City welcoming young artists to study over the summer. Her work with Imani Wins came to an end when she left the group in 2018 to focus on her composition career, since their active touring schedule did not mesh with the demand of her composition work. Coleman wrote many successful chamber music pieces for Imani Wins, but none quite as successful as the piece that their first album is named after, Umoja. Coleman wanted Umoja to serve as an anthem for the ensemble, with the idea that the piece would celebrate the individual members' diverse heritages. Umoja is also a Swahili word, meaning unity. The piece originally began as a choral work until 1999, when Coleman rearranged the piece for woodwind quintet. In the original version, the words are, "Children of all, hear the winds call, it's time for unity." The title and the meaning of the work are intimately related. As the title suggests, this composition draws inspiration from the principle of unity, which is a core Kwanzaa principle, as the piece was composed to celebrate the first day. Though this piece was originally for women's choir, it has gone on to have many versions, including the orchestral work commissioned by the Philadelphia Orchestra in 2019. This premiere was actually the first time they had performed a work by a living African-American female composer. The orchestral version honors the melodic simplicity of the original composition, while taking an in-depth musical exploration of the concept of unity. According to Coleman, the dissonant brass and percussion symbolize the clash of injustices, racism, and hate. She refers to the various versions of Umoja as siblings because they are similar and have the same origins, but each version has a unique voice and perspective. These different versions are not unlike the African diaspora itself, each unique and special, but sharing a common origin. Coleman states, "Now, more than ever, Umoja must ring as a strong and beautiful anthem for the world we live in today." Umoja and Valerie Coleman's work with Anemones exemplify why she is such a significant figure in both flute performance and composition. Through Anemones, she helped redefine the role of the flutist and the wind quintet by using chamber music as a platform for storytelling, cultural dialogue, and social engagement. Her storytelling is especially clear in Umoja, where the concept of unity is conveyed through shared rhythmic language, call and response textures, and the collective voice of the ensemble, allowing the music itself to narrate a message of connection and solidarity. As a composer, she is committed to drawing from diverse cultural sources. Coleman often bases her compositions on extra-musical inspirations, such as historical figures, paintings, and poetry. This allows her music to function both as an artistic expression and social commentary. Her compositional voice is distinctly hybrid, blending classical techniques with elements of jazz and world music. As a result, her works often respond to social issues and current events, positioning flute music not merely as a virtuosic display, but as a means of engaging the broader human experience. In an interview for New Music USA, she said, "It's my job to create music that allows the transformative power to happen." I've chosen 3 works to perform on this recital, but they represent only a small portion of Valerie Coleman's expansive catalog. Some of her recent and notable works include This Is Not a Small Voice for soprano and orchestra, based on a poem reflecting the innocence and resilience of Black children, with the soprano singing the poem's original text. She also composed 7 O'Clock Shout, which premiered in 2020 and evokes the nightly applause of New York City residents honoring healthcare workers during the COVID-19 pandemic. Another flute and piano work, Find Me Amen, inspired by Maya Angelou's poem and translating to Human Family, explores themes of shared humanity and collective identity. Additional works, such as Portraits of Josephine, which celebrates the life and legacy of Josephine Baker, and Danza de la Mariposa, which reflects transformation and freedom, further demonstrate Coleman's commitment to musical storytelling. These pieces, along with the ones that I will share with you tonight, illustrate Valerie Coleman's dedication to writing flute music that is not solely for artistic display, but music that tells stories, reflects lived experiences, and gives voice to cultural, historical, and social narratives. The first piece I will share with you tonight is entitled Requiem, Milonga for flute and piano. Valerie Coleman's notes for this work are intentionally sparse, describing it simply as a song of longing and remembrance for those who have loved and lost. Rather than prescribing a single narrative, Coleman leaves space for the listener to bring their own experiences of grief and memory into the music. Through my research, I encountered a program in which Requiem Milonga was presented alongside Coleman's Find Me Amen. In that context, the performer suggested that the Requiem could be understood not as a memorial for one specific individual, but as a collective remembrance, honoring loss within the broader human family. If you guys would join me in welcoming my pianist Beth to stage. If you don't mind, I'm going to play a few notes since I've been talking for a long time. Thank you. is entitled Matisseries for Solo Flute. In this work, Valerie Coleman engages directly with visual art, translating the imagery of Henri Matisse into sound. The piece explores 5 artworks drawn from 2 distinct periods of the French artist's career, with each movement functioning as a brief musical vignette. Though short in length, each movement is rich in nuance, color, and character, reflecting Coleman's interest in musical storytelling through vivid imagery. During the 1920s in France, Matisse devoted much of his work to painted interpretations of the female form, particularly odalisques, women depicted reclining in dramatic poses against richly patterned, colorful interiors. The first 2 movements, Harmony in Red and Purple Robe and Anemones, take their titles from these paintings. Coleman's corresponding musical movements mirror the visual drama and intensity of Matisse's models through expressive phrasing, contrasting colors, and heightened emotional tension. In fact, if you want a fun fact, in our rehearsal of this in my lessons, we usually end up likening the characters to people in Schitt's Creek, because it is the reference we both know. And so we've had many conversations about how these characters might be Moira or Alexis, or pick your favorite character. So that is what I will be thinking of when I'm playing this tonight, which nobody asked for, but I thought it would be a fun fact to throw in. Near the end of his life, Matisse's artistic focus shifted towards cutouts. Those are bold images created from pieces of cut paper, arranged in vibrant shapes and colors. Movements 3, 4, and 5, Celestial Jerusalem, Tree of Life, and the Creole Dancer are inspired by these later works, including stained glass-like designs and energetic dance figures. In these movements, Coleman evokes brightness, motion, and vitality, allowing the flute to trace the contours of color, light, and movement. Together, the 5 movements of Matisseries demonstrate Coleman's ability to transform visual art into musical narrative, using the flute as a storytelling voice that bridges sight and sound. And I've labeled these. I'm going to leave these up while I play, but it should go in order from left to right, each of the movements. we are on to the final piece of the program, and my personal favorite, and that is Valerie Coleman's Wish Sonatine for flute and piano. Inspired by the poem of the same name, this work was Coleman's first composition for flute and piano, and it vividly demonstrates her ability to translate history and narrative into musical storytelling. In the poem, the author recounts the experiences of his African ancestors, imagining a world in which European merchant ships had brought goods to trade with Africa's natural resources, rather than forcibly transporting millions of Africans across the Atlantic. Coleman's composition mirrors this narrative, embedding musical gestures that evoke the Middle Passage and the trauma endured by those enslaved. From the very beginning, the flute is written without vibrato, producing a stark, hollow tone that is echoed by the piano's sustained chords. This sound is meant to evoke the distant, mournful horn calls of a slave ship at sea. Throughout the piece, there are sharp percussive shrieks from the flute that mimic the crack of a whip, while a central cadenza allows the flute to imitate an African djembe drum, calling to mind the cultural heartbeat of a people resisting erasure. A recurring triplet motif appears in the middle and the final section of the work, representing the ceaseless movement of the Atlantic Ocean, a symbol of both physical and historical passage. Through these musical gestures, Coleman transforms Wish Sonatine into a powerful narrative vehicle, using the flute and piano to give voice to history, memory, and resilience. The piece is not merely a work of technical virtuosity, though it is that. That's to be sure. It is a story told in sound, a meditation on loss and endurance, and an example of Coleman's deep commitment to musical storytelling as a means of connecting listeners to lived experience. I wish those tall ships at Africa's shore had dropped anchor to plant crops there. Sugarcane, tobacco, cotton, coffee. Instead, they filled the hungry bellies of hulls with Africans and set sail, wanting nothing from that big place that wasn't diamond, gold, ivory, flesh. I wind the clocks back and turn the ships around. Not a single bullet, whip, or cutlass sound to deafen our ears for centuries. No Atlantic road of bones from people dumped into the sea to form a wake. we can all go brave the bitter cold again. Oh, come on, guys. Isn't that so exciting? You're gonna go out and freeze your hands off? Yeah, I know, right? So exciting. Okay. Well, I've lost my presentation, but it just says thank you, so you're not missing much. All right. Thank you all for being here tonight. Through this recital and my discussion of Valerie Coleman's work, I have sought to demonstrate why she is such a prominent and influential composer of our time. Her music combines technical mastery with emotional depth and, perhaps most importantly, with storytelling that gives voice to history, culture, and human experience. In works like Requiem, Milonga, she transforms the concept of remembrance into a collective meditation on loss and connection. In Matisseries, she brings the vibrant colors and movement of Henri Matisse's artwork to life through sound. And in Wish Sonatine, she narrates the experiences of African ancestors and the history of the Middle Passage, using the flute and the piano to evoke memory, resilience, and shared humanity. Through these pieces, Coleman shows that music can do more than just entertain. It can narrate, reflect, and inspire. Beyond her compositions, Coleman's leadership as the founder of Anemones has had a profound impact on contemporary chamber music. By creating an ensemble that champions diversity, innovation, and storytelling, she has reshaped the role of the wind quintet and provided a platform for new voices and narratives to emerge. Her work reminds us that classical music is not static. It is a living art form capable of reflecting our world, our histories, and our shared experiences. Together, her compositions and her artistic vision illustrate why Valerie Coleman's voice is not only historically significant, but also essential to the ongoing evolution of classical music, connecting performers and audiences alike through stories told in sound. Thank you for being here.